Okay, Baruch Hashem, we're holding a daf Hey Amid Bet. We're on 5B-3 in the art scroll, and in the traditional Gemara, we are 12 lines up from the bottom of Hey Amid Bet at the word Gufa Omar Shmuel. So, just to recall, we had two opinions in the Gemara so far. If on monetary cases, do you need to have 3 judges, or can even one judge be enough? Now, based on each opinion, we're going to ask questions based on Mishnayot and Braitot to prove if you can have 1, or you can have 3, or do you need a certain amount of number. Gufa. Gufa, the Gemara says on Hayom Beit. Gufa Amar Shmuel Bet Shidanu Dinehem Din.
Rabbi Moshe, it's 5B1 and 5B2.
5B3. Gufa. Bet Shidanu Dinehem Din. 2 judges who judge, their judgment is considered the final judgment. Meaning that you can judge with 2 judges. If you take a look at Tosefot on the side, Shinaim Shidanu, he says, Hadinakit Shinaim. The reason why it took 2, Mishum Dafilu Shinaim, Habu Betin Hatsuf, is to tell us that even though it's 2, it's still considered a chutzpah bedin. As the Gemara says, El Shenikra Bedin Hatsuf. You should be judging with 3. The Rabbanan said you need to have 3. Shmuel says, but the truth is, the Torah says you can have 1. But even if you have 2, it's still considered a chutzpah bedin. It should really be 3 dayanim. But the Torah allows for 1. Even if you have 2, it's still considered chutzpah. And that's what he brings down here in the Tosefot. So according to Shmuel, 1 judge, 2 judges, their judgment is still considered a judgment. However, the bedin is a chutzpah bedin. They're acting inappropriately because the rabbi said to make it 3. Some say instead of the word hatsuf, put a sin there, and it comes chasuf, which means it's a open bedin, which means that people know what the dayanim said. It's transparent, and it's not a good thing for the people who are coming to court to know exactly how the judges agreed. You see, when you have 3 judges, it could be one of them didn't agree, but you go after the majority. But if you have 2, there's no other way to go. Everybody here said the same thing. And so it's problematic for the judges. So now we have Shmuel's statement that 1 judge, 2 judges, the judgment is considered a good judgment. Based on this, the Gemara is now going to begin to ask questions on this opinion. Yativ Rav Nachman Rav Nachman was sitting and he was teaching this teaching of Shmuel, that even less than 3 judges, the judgment is considered a judgment. So Rav Nachman. So Rava now asked Rav Nachman. We have a Mishnah going to be brought down later on in this Masechet. Afilu shenayim mazikin, or mezakin, or shenayim mechayevin, ve'ehad omer eni yodea, yosif ha'edayanin. The Mishnah is going to tell us as follows. You start off a case with 3 judges. 2 judges came to a psak. Whether they said the guy is guilty, whether they said he's not guilty, whatever, they came to a decision. The 3rd guy, the 3rd judge says, I don't know. I can't come to a decision. So the Mishnah says, he doesn't know. You got to add another person to the bench. You got to add another judge to the bench. So the Gemara's question is, V'ita. And if Shmuel's ruling is correct, that you can judge even with 2, lehevu kishnayim shedanu, then just leave those 2 that are there, and you have 2 dayanim, and it's a good judgment. It's a final judgment. Why in the Mishnah do we say bring another judge to make it 3 again? Why do you need to bring a 3rd guy? According to Shmuel, 2 is enough. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman answers, Shani hatam. In the case where they originally decided that they wanted to start with 3, and one of them said, I don't know, you have to add a 3rd, because the mikara adate tilata yetiving. Because the Beit Din came to be a Beit Din with 3. Since it started off with 3, it needs to end off with 3 decisions. And I don't know is not a decision. If the guy would have said anything, yes or no, we would have gone with whatever the majority said. But since he had no decision, he can't be counted. Therefore, you have to bring another guy. Because they originally started with 3, they have to end with 3. But here in our case, they never thought of starting with 3. Because they never thought of starting with 3, 2 is enough. Another question on this opinion that 2 or 1 judges is enough to make a final judgment. Etivei, they challenge Rav Nachman again. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Adin bishlosha. You can do judgment with 3. In order to do judgment, you need to have 3 judges. But ufshara bishnaim. But to make a compromise, mediation, to mediate a case, to make 2 sides agree to compromise on something, bishnaim. All you need is 2. So Shimon Gamliel says, you need 2 judges. And he says further, and greater is the power of compromise and the power of judgment. Because if you have 2 judges who judge a case, 2 judges judge a case, then the people who are getting judged, they can say, you know what, we don't agree to your judgment because you're judging with less than 3. And they can send back the case. We're not gonna take your psak. But 2 who do a compromise, once they make a compromise, you can't go back if you do it with 2 judges. So what do we see here? We see from Shimon Gamliel that he said that 2 judges, their judgment is not final. Because he says if 2 judges judge a person, they can the people who are getting judged can say we don't want to listen to you and send it back. They can send back the ruling and say we don't want to get judged by you because you only have 2 judges. So how could Shmuel say 2 judges who judge, their judgment is final? Here we see Shimon Gamliel say that it goes back, it's not final. So the Gemara, now on the top of 6a, Vav Amud Aleph, and now if you want to give an answer and say that the rabbis disagree with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and that the rabbis hold that the judgment cannot go back, and that's what Shmuel is holding like, cannot be. Because Rabbi Abahu said, Shnayim shidanu, the divrei hakol in dinehem din. 2 judges who judge, everyone agrees that their judgment is not final, not a final verdict, and it can be sent back. So how can you say that Shmuel holds 2 judges' judgment is final when we see if Shimon Gamliel says 2 is not final, and we see the Rabbah said no one argues with him. So you can't say the rabbis argue with him. The Gemara gives an answer that says Gavra and Gavra ko Ramit. Are you saying that Rabbi Abahu and Shmuel cannot argue? Basically, this is what's going on. We have a Tanaic statement, a statement from the Tanaim, from the rabbis of the Mishnah. The statement was, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that 2 judges who judge, the judgment goes back. Now the question is, did the rabbis argue on that? The Rabbi Abahu, who was an Amora, a rabbi from the Gemara period, says, no, nobody argues. But Shmuel is also an Amora. He's also a rabbi of the Gemara period. So he can argue on Rabbi Abahu. So according to Shmuel, Shmuel says, no, according to the way I have tradition, the rabbis do argue on Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and 2 judges who judge, the verdict is final. So that's what the Gemara says, Gavra, Gavra, ki Ramit. Can you say, are you raising a contradiction between one man and another man, between one Amora and another Amora? They have the right to argue on a statement because they're both at the same level. And therefore, according to Shmuel, 2 is final, and he says the rabbis argue Shmuel ben Gamliel. Rabbi Bo says 2 judges is not final because he holds that the rabbis never argued on Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay, so far so good. Gufa. Next, yes, Malkiel.
The rabbis are the Tanaim?
Yes, there would be the Rachachamim who argue on Shimon. If Either they argue or agree with their Shimon ben Gamliel, depending on who you hold by.
So Shmuel is siding with the rabbis who are Tanaim,
According
making
to
him
Shmuel is
worse with
saying,
the Rabbi Shimon Gamaliel.
right,
So it's the
Shmuel is saying that the rabbis disagree with their Shimon ben Gamliel, and he holds like the rabbis who disagree with Shimon ben Gamliel. Right. Whereas Rabbi Abahu says no one argues with Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and therefore two judges who judge, their judgment is not final. Right. Okay. Gufa. Now we're going to go to Rabbi Abahu's opinion. Rabbi Abahu's opinion was two judges who judge, their judgment is not final. Now we're going to bring proofs to show that there are cases where it is final. So why did you say it's not final? So it's the same questions in reverse. Whatever we asked on Shmuel, now we're going to ask similar questions on to Rabbi Abahu. So Gufa. Shnaim shedanu dinei memanot. The divrei hakol Amar Rabbi Abahu. Shnaim shedanu dinei memanot. The divrei hakol and dineim din. According to Rabbi Abahu, two judges who judge, their judgment is not a judgment, not considered a judgment. Gemara says, really? Etivei Rabbi Abba Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abba challenged Rabbi Abahu from a Mishnah. This Mishnah is a Mishnah in Bechorot, and there it says, Dan et hadin. One judge who judged the case, Vizikat hayab, and he said, whoever was free, not guilty, he said they're guilty, and whoever behayab zakai, and whoever was not guilty, he said is guilty. Whoever is guilty, he said is not guilty. He messed up the case. Timei hatahor, and he caused damage, and they had to pay, so someone lost that money. Timei hatahor. He said what's tamei is tahor. And then he caused a financial loss. Tiher tamei. And then he said that something is tahor, but it really was tamei. And he caused a financial loss. Masha asa asui. What he did is considered done. Shalem bebeto. But the judge has to pay from his own money. Meaning, the judgment is final. Whatever the case is, it is. But since he caused some damage, the judge has to pay from his own finances. So what do we see from this Mishnah? One judge who judged, what he did is done. The judgment is considered final. So how could Rabbi Abahu say less than 3 judges is not considered a judgment? Here we have a Mishnah Bechorot that shows one judge who judged, what they judged is final. Gemara says, answering, well, wait. What case are we talking about here? This is not a stamp case of judges, one judge, 2 judges. The kibilu alayhu. It's where they accepted the one judge. Basically, these 2 litigants came, these 2 people came to court, and they said, we want you to be judge. We're accepting you to be our judge. So as such, they agreed to that. So they don't need 3 judges now. You agree to one judge, you agree to one judge. You guys agreed to be judged by the one judge. Gemara says, if they accepted him to be a judge, why does he have to pay? The only thing they have to pay is if you made a mistake. If he caused a mistake, but if you say judge for us, then why does he have to pay? You accepted him. Gemara says it depends how you accept that judge. The amrule dayant lan din Torah. They said to him, give for us the Torah's law. So if he made a mistake and didn't give the Torah's law, now he's responsible. But if you accepted a judge and said to the judge, I want you to be our judge, no matter what you say, we'll listen to you, then even if you made a mistake, he doesn't have to pay back. But here, they never said, whatever you say, we're going to listen to. They said, give us the Torah judgment. Since he didn't give the Torah judgment, he has to pay. But what he says sticks because they accepted him for one judge. Ephraim, you have a question? I can't hear you. You got to go off mute.
Sorry. By you coming to the judge, it should be an automatic allowance on your part that whatever he decides, you would agree upon it, no?
Not necessarily. Let's say I'm going to the judge because I want to know what the Torah says. I go to the rabbi not for his opinion. I go to the rabbi to hear what the Torah has to say, what the halacha is. I didn't come for his opinion.
The rabbi is different. The judge is different.
Same idea. Same idea. I didn't come to you for your to decide for me. I came to hear what the Torah has to say. And you didn't give me what the Torah has to say, so now you have to pay for it. Of course, we're not talking about a mumcha. We're not talking about someone who has real smicha from Moshe. We're not talking someone who is a known expert. We're talking about a regular person. This case is about a regular person who we want to be a judge. So since we came to him, you have to be clear. Or he should have said, you accept me for anything? If he would have said that, then he would be saved from paying back. He didn't say that. There is a machloket rishonim, when they accepted him as a judge, do they have to say, give us a din Torah? And then if you make a mistake, then he has to pay back? Or is it enough that they were thinking that? The Rosh seems to be saying that as long as they were thinking that he's going to give us a din Torah, and he didn't, then he has to pay from his own finances. Malkiel, you had a question? No, you're good?
You just answered it.
Good. Okay, fine. Very good. Okay, now, the question the Gemara is going to deal with next is, what type of mistake are we talking about where a judge who made a mistake has to pay back? So Amalei Rav Safra, let it be Abba. The Ta'aba Mai. And what did the judge make a mistake? In Lema the Ta'aba Davar Mishnah. If you say he made a mistake in a Mishnah, meaning a clear halacha, something that's brought down in the Mishnah, in the Braitot, in the Tosefta. In fact, even the later poskim say, even if someone made a mistake in the Shulchan Aruch, right? It's a clear halacha in Shulchan Aruch that says something is something. And he went around and said the opposite way. If someone made a mistake, the judge made a mistake on a clear halacha, the whole judgment is considered canceled, and you got to start from the beginning again. It's revoked. If you made a mistake, if the judge made a mistake on a clear halacha, judgment is canceled. You got to restart the trial. Okay? He made a mistake in shikul hada'at, in weighing the opinions. What does this mean? And what is a mistake in weighing the opinions? Amara Papa. Egon tre Tanai or tre Amurai de pligi ahadade. Two Tanaim or two Amareim are disagreeing with each other. It's a machloket lahalacha. What the halacha is. One like this, one like that. And the Gemara never said, or the halacha never came clear which way the halacha actually is. There's opinions this way, there's opinions that way. There's never a clear halacha which way to go. However, the dayanim, the judges, all of them seem to be going in one way, with one opinion. Even though there are two opinions, and there's never a clear halacha which opinion is the right one, most judges chose one way to go. But he, not knowing that all the judges go a certain way, he went the opposite way. That's the mistake that he made in the weighing the opinions, and because of that, he has to pay back. Now, why does he have to pay back? He really gave a right opinion, right? I mean, it's just not the normative halacha, but there was no halacha against that opinion. So he brings over here in the Metiftah, he brings from a Biur, a Birkat Avraham. He says as follows: the guy who, when he gave the verdict, when he gave the psak, for the guy who turned out good, he can say as follows: Shikvar nikvar hadin kidvarav. You already finished the law. And nowhere is it written, and it's not written anywhere that what you said is wrong. That you should now say the ruling is canceled. So he can say whatever you ruled is right, because there are opinions that hold that way. There's nowhere to say it's not. So therefore, I'm not gonna give back the money that I got. But still, the judge has to pay back because he didn't have permission to go against the way all the judges are going. Once they chose a certain way, you have to stick to that way. And since he didn't have permission to do that, he has to pay from his own finances. They say the Yerushalmi says another reason. It's more like a knaf for this judge. It's a fine. They're fining him that he has to pay back. The reason being, we learned this already before. Perek Yavod, it says, "Al tihi dan yachidi." Don't be a single judge. It's not good to be an alone judge. You want to judge with other people. They have feedback. You can think about it. No one will make a mistake. If two people didn't hear about it, the third person would have heard about what the normative halacha is. Since you went ahead and you didn't listen to the good advice to not judge alone, and now you made a mistake, now you have to pay back. That's the way the Yerushalmi works. Okay? So far, so good. Okay. Lema kitanae. The Gemara now, as it usually does, it wants to say that this argument of the Amoraim, of the rabbis of the Gemara, is really an argument of the rabbis of the Mishnah. It's better to have less arguments. So if you can say that a certain argument is the same argument in the Mishnah, it makes a lot of things easier. Lema kitanae. Let's say that this argument is the same argument as the rabbis of the Mishnah. If you need one judge or three judges. Why? We have here by the Tanaim, it says as follows. Bitsu'ah bishlosha. Bitsu'ah is another word for compromise. It comes from the word to be botse'ah, which means to steal. A compromise is considered stealing, according to certain rabbis. In fact, we're going to learn very soon that according to some opinions, you're not allowed to compromise. It's actually considered a sin, an averah, to come to a compromise. We're going to get to that Gemara very soon. We're going to have to explain it. But that's the lashon of bitsu'ah. It means to compromise. Bishlosha. You need three. The Rebbe Meir. Rebbe Meir says you want to compromise, you need three judges. The Chachamim omrim peshera b'yachid. But the Chachamim, you see, the Chachamim use the word peshera. They don't use butse'ah. They don't use the language of stealing for compromise. They use the language of a real compromise for compromise because they hold it's going to be a mitzvah to make a compromise. However, they say you only need one judge. So let's say Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Abahu are saying as follows: the kulam makshinim peshera ledin. Let's compare compromise to judgment, right? Because you have here by the Tanaim that one says for compromise you need three, and one says for compromise you need one. So the same thing by judgment. My love, hakam afligi. The man savar din b'shlosha, uman savar din b'shnayim. The one holds the same way you have by compromise three, you need by judgment three, and the other one holds you can have less than three by judgment. By compromise, you can have less than three by judgment. You want to compare compromise to judgment and say that the machlokit of the rabbis of the Mishnah of the Tanaim is the same machlokit that the Amoraim, Shmuel, and Rabbi Abahu are having. The Gemara says, "Lo," and it's not true. It's possible that all the Tanaim hold, all the rabbis of the Mishnah hold, you need to have three judges to judge a case. And what are they arguing by compromise? Rameir holds you do compare compromise to judgment, and therefore you need three for each. You don't compare compromise to law, and therefore you don't need three judges. There's no reason to compare compromise to law, and therefore you don't need three. Okay. So now the Gemara wants to say, so it's not the same machloket. That's A. Now the Gemara wants to say maybe there are three opinions of how much judges you need for a compromise. Because we just saw, if you would have paid attention, we just said Umar Savar Din Bishnayim. So he wants to say as far, we had Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel also. So let's take a look. There are three opinions of how many judges you need for a compromise. Rabbi Meir holds you need to have 3 judges to make a compromise. Now, Shlomo Gamliel before said, remember he said the power of compromise is better than the power of judgment, because 2 compromise, once they compromise, it's final, or 2 who judge, it's the back in 5B-3. And 2 who judge, their judgment is not final. So there he said 2 for compromise. So you have an opinion of my Savar B'Shnayim. So you see, you have an opinion that says you need 2 for compromise. My Savar B'Yachid. And then you have the Chachamim who say you can make a compromise with 1. So do you have 3 opinions? Some say you need 3, some say you need 2, some say you need 1. The one who says you need 2 really means you can have 1. Once it's less than 3, doesn't make a difference if you have 1 or 2. But and why did he say 2? Why is he saying talking about 2? Why did Shlomo Gamliel speak about 2? He's giving a good advice, because in the end of the day, you're going to need witnesses. The compromise happened. So if you have 2 judges making the compromise, you automatically have 2 witnesses to the compromise. Not that you need 2 judges to make the compromise, but rather just to have witnesses. So Rita Shlomo Gamliel holds you can have 1 judge to make the compromise. Amar Rav Ashi. Rashi says, Mamina, Peshira Inna Tzricha Kinyan. If you make a compromise, you don't need to make a kinyan. Okay, kinyan, right? If you ever sell chametz, if you ever sell your chametz to an Ashkenazi rabbi, because most Sephardic places, they just tell you fill out a paper and bring it back to them. You go to the traditional way, and Sephardic rabbis used to do this in the past also. You would go to them to sell your chametz, they write down your name, and then they tell you to pick up something, or they picked up something. The whole idea of picking up is doing a kinyan. It's doing an act of acquisition is acquiring something la halakha. So we're saying here that once you do a peshera, you don't need to make a kinyan. You don't have to make an acquisition that you're accepting this. Because if you think you need to make a kinyan, the manda amatzichat talata lamali, then why did Rav Meir say you need 3 judges? Use 2, and then use a kinyan. You don't need 3 judges. So why are you saying 3 judges? 3 judges, then you don't need a kinyan. Because if you're going to use less than 3 judges, then you need a kinyan. Mari says it's a nice idea, but that's not the truth. That once you make a compromise, an act of kinyan, picking something up or pulling something, whatever it is, every kinyan you're using needs to be done. Needs to have a kinyan. Now, that's the first part of the Gemara for today. Now we're just going to review the halachot on this part, and then we'll continue on the second part, which is more of Agada to type of the Gemara we're going to get into in a minute. Okay, halachot. First thing first. A judge who made a mistake. We're talking about a case of a non-ordained layman. He's not a mumche. He makes a mistake. He has to pay back from his own property, because we say that 1 judge is considered a judge and his judgment stays. But if you made a mistake in the clear halacha, then the whole thing goes back to the beginning. If you made a mistake in opinions, and therefore that's the mistake that he has to pay back for. However, if he's a huge Talmud Chacham, and we could assume he knows all the opinions, and he chose the opposite opinion of what's normal to choose, we must say that he has a special reason for choosing that halacha, and therefore we say he didn't make a mistake, and he does not have to pay back. Okay? So we said until now, usually if the opinion, he goes with the wrong opinion, he has to pay back. That's only about a regular person. If he's a huge Talmud Chacham and he takes the other opinion, we say that he chose that opinion on purpose, and therefore he doesn't have to pay back. When it comes to compromises, compromises can be done even with one rabbi. We say you can judge with one. So definitely, if you can judge with one, definitely compromise with one person. What about kinyan? Do you need to make a kinyan for a compromise? So halacha is if it's one or two judges, you definitely need to make a kinyan to make it stick. They have otherwise, if you don't do the kinyan, those two people can say, "I don't agree to the compromise," and just walk out of it. In order to make the kinyan stick, in order to make the compromise stick, they have to make a kinyan. What about using three judges? It's machloket lahalacha. It's the machloket poskim whether you need to make kinyan or not. Some say it's necessary. Some say it's not necessary. I'm not sure what they do in bedin. I would assume, but it's not good to assume. But I would assume they do kinyan. This way, you just do kinyan all the time. This way, you would. It's something in halacha. It's a thing called lo plug, not to make differences. This way, the halacha is always the same thing, so it's easier to remember. Lo plug. We're not going to argue on this. So everyone, all the cases, they would do kinyan. I would assume that's what they do, but I'm not sure. And anyone who knows the dayan can ask them if they make a kinyan, even when they use three judges. Okay, that's the halachot that came out from this Gemara. Now, we're going to go into the next Gemara. We're on 6A3, and we're towards the bottom line. Tanu Rabbanan on Vav Amud Aleph. We're about to turn the page. Tanu Rabbanan. Kishem Sha'adin Bishlosha, Tach Bitsu'a Bishlosha. The rabbis told on the Braita, the same way you need judgment by three, same way. You have a question, Ephraim?
Yeah, before we start a new topic. So if there are three judges and they make a mistake, do they all pay or how does it work?
No. Once they're a betin, they're a betin.
Yeah.
It's only if it's less than three. Yeah. Less than three. And we're talking about like a betin judges, not stomp through people on the street. Right?
No. Yeah, absolutely. But
like a betin, a real betin. Yeah. Once they're a real betin, they have authority to rule, and they're an actual betin. They make a mistake, they don't pay back.
What's the purpose of the kinyan then? If it's just you're saying it's an action, but he made a decision.
So for a compromise, well, halacha is if they don't make a kinyan, the compromise doesn't stick. They can just say we don't want to agree to your compromise. In order to make it stick, they have to make a kinyan. That's halacha. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Tana Rabbanan. Shem shadim b'shloisha. The same way you need three judges to judge a case. Tach b'tzu'a b'shlosha. So too, you need three to make a compromise. Nigmar hadin. Once the verdict is brought down, once the verdict is reached, you can no longer make a compromise. So, according to this opinion, you need three, and once you have a final verdict, you cannot make compromises. Now, the Gemara brings the siman, Sarmash Bankash siman. They stand for the different rabbis' names that we're going to bring down. It's going to be hard to explain how the siman actually works. The reason why they used to have simanim and mnemonic is because they would learn this Baal Peh by heart, so it's easier to make the siman. However, this siman, if you pay attention to the rabbi's name, it doesn't really add up. There are opinions of how to explain it, but you can read it on your own afterwards. Okay. Rabbi Elazar ben Nosh Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer. Asur litzoah. So Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, says it's forbidden to make compromise. Asur. Now a compromise. But not only that, he says, and anyone who makes a compromise, he is a sinner. And anyone who says, praises someone who compromises, he is cursing Hashem. He's blaspheming Hashem. Someone who compromises and says it's a good thing, he's cursing Hashem. And this is what it says. Regarding a person who praises a compromiser, he curses Hashem. Ela, what is he supposed to do? Yikov hadin et hahar. Rather, let justice pierce the mountain. Shneimar ki hamishpat leElohimu. It says the judgment is Hashem's. Moshe haya omer Yikov hadin et hahar. And Moshe said that the judgment should pierce through the mountain. How you understand this is very simple. What is a compromise and what is a judgment? Compromise means, listen, we're not going to follow the rules of the Torah. We're just going to make peace. According to Eliezer ben Osher Yossi, he says, you have no right to do that. The Torah says what's right and what's wrong, and who should get the money, and how much money they should get. Mishpat be'Elohimhu, the whole judgment belongs to Hashem. Doesn't belong to people to make compromises. Therefore, anyone who compromises is a sinner, and it's asur to do that. And if you do, and you praise someone who compromises, you're cursing Hashem, because you're saying Hashem's laws are no good. It's a very, very unique way to look at this. Okay? He says next, he says, Ava Aharon, but that was Moshe Rabbeinu. Ava Aharon, Ohev Shalom, Verodev Shalom. Aharon loved peace, he ran after peace. Umesim Shalom ben Adam l'chaviro. And he brought peace between another person. Shneimar Torah temet hayta befiu, va'alva lo nimtza b'shpatav. He had the truth of Torah in his mouth, and there was no sin on his lips. Shalom mishor halach iti, v'ravim yeshiv ma'alon. He walked in peace and upright and turned many away from sin. Aharon, he used to make peace by compromising. So, well, how does he explain it? So let's look at Rashi. Rashi, 3 lines down on the left side of the margin of the Hebrew side. Ava Aharon, Ohev Shalom Verodev Shalom. V'kivon shehaya shomea machloket b'neim koidim sheyavou lefanav l'din. Since he heard their machloket before they came to him for judgment, hayoradif achrein umetil shalom b'neihem. So Aharon went to make a peace and compromise. Rashi is saying that before they came to the judge to judge it, Aharon went to make peace. That's okay. But once it came to the judge to judge, you can no longer say it's time to make peace. Once you came to judge, you have to follow Hashem's rules. But before they came, you can try to make peace. That's the way Rashi learned, that Aharon was a judge. He just brought peace before they came to him for judgment. However, take a look at Tosafot on the right side of the page. Halfway through it, the words that start the Tosafot is Aval Aharon, but Aharon. Tosafot says, Perish Kivon Shelo Hayad Dayan. You know why Aharon was allowed to make peace? Because he was not a judge. Lo Hayah Hadin Balefanav. They never came to him for judgment. Eil Lefnei Moshe, but Daili Didei. They only came to Moshe for judgment. Therefore, for him, he was allowed to make peace. So Rashi said he was a judge, but he made peace before they came to him for judgment. So Safon said that he was never a judge. Therefore, he was allowed to make judgment for them. Okay? That comes out from here. Eliezer ben Osher Yossi usher to make a compromise. Okay, now, yes, Malkiel.
Didn't the Parsha say Aharon was assisting him to judge? Him and the elders, the Kenim, he kept repeating.
The same motion.
He said Moshe, Aharon, I don't know, Nadav Avihu, I think, his son.
For judgment? No, where?
No, not for judgment.
For judgment, where would you have that? You would have that when Moshe Rabbeinu was Asaf Shiv'im, when he collected the 70 people to become judges. Aharon wasn't included in those. No, it was Moshe and 70. That's where you get Sanhedrin to need 71. Aharon's not counted in that group. Yeah, that's a good question. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Now, Rabbi Eliezer is going to hold that you're allowed to make compromises. So now, what does he do with this pasuk that Rabbi Eliezer ben Osher Yossi Haglili used to show that you're not allowed to make compromises? So what does he do with the pasuk Ubateya berech me'etz Hashem? Someone who blesses a person who compromises, he's cursing Hashem. You know what he's talking about? Boteya also means to break off. Let's listen to what he says here. Hare shegazal se'asha hitim. One who stole a se'ah of wheat. He ground it into flour, he baked it, and separated challah from it. So he's making challah from stolen wheat. How can he make a bracha? A person who makes a bracha on this is not making a bracha, rather he's cursing Hashem. A thief who steals and then blesses Hashem is actually cursing Hashem. That's why halakha l'maaseh is any isur, whether deoraita or derabanan. If a person is going to eat it, he's not allowed to make a bracha on it. That is isur, even if it's isur derabanan. So if you steal something and then you're eating it, you're not allowed to make a bracha on it, because if you make a bracha on it, you're cursing Hashem. You're not allowed to eat it. But if you did, you're not allowed to make a bracha on it, because if you're eating a bracha, you're cursing Hashem, because you got it isur. Yes.
By not saying a bracha, or I feel like cursing is a level higher. It's just you're being ungrateful. But how is it like all the way, like overboard, saying you're cursing Hashem?
When you're blessing Hashem, you're saying Hashem is providing us with sustenance. Hashem is giving to us. All the power comes from Hashem. That's what it means. Baruch atah Hashem, right? It means everything comes from Hashem. If you're stealing something or eating something that's isur, where Hashem says you're not allowed to eat, and then you're blessing Hashem, you think you're going against Hashem. You're blaspheming. You're saying Hashem is wrong, and you're blessing Him for something that's wrong. It's asur. It's very disrespectful. Just think about it this way. You're a parent, right? You tell your child, don't do X, Y, and Z. Don't get it. Don't bring it. Never want to see it at home. Child goes and gets it, does it, and comes home and says, "Thank you, Daddy, for letting me do this." Like, it's weird. Like, I told you not to do this, and now you're thanking me for something that I told you not to do, and it's bad for you. It's chutzpah. But it is. It's chutzpah. It's not nice, and that's considered like cursing Hashem. I mean, Meir Eimer. Meir says, "Lo ne'emar botzea el keneged Yehuda." When it says this pasuk is talking about Yehuda, Shneimar, because it says by Yehuda. The Yomer Yehuda el achav. Yehuda said to his brothers, "Ma betza ki naharog et achinu." What would we gain from killing our brother? Therefore, let's sell Yosef. Anyone who praises Yehuda for what he did to sell Yosef, he is cursing Hashem. Someone who praises a compromiser, Yehuda, who compromised instead of killing Yosef, he sold him, cursing Hashem, because that's not the right thing to do. It's not good that he sold him versus killing him. He should have returned him to his father. So it's never good to go halfway. I think we see this already twice in this Gemara today. We saw it in the beginning that when we said when you start a judgment with three judges, even if one says I don't know, you have to add another judge to it. Because when you start something the right way, you got to finish it the right way. Same thing here. You're going to fix something. I want to save him. It's not considered saving him to sell him. Considering saving him, you actually save him and bring him back to his father. Halfway is not good. Halfway is nowhere.
Their judgment was right, though, based on their decision.
No, it's not. It's wrong. Whose judgment?
The brothers.
Which brothers? To kill him or to sell him or to bring him back?
To kill him.
It wasn't a right judgment.
I believe it was, and then they just took a merciful decision and they just sold them. But based on the rule that they made, it was the right
rule that they made. Yeah, according to what they decided, according to their stock of their bed din, he was chayav mitah. But
there were
was
10 of them. It wasn't 1, 2, or 3. It was 10 of them.
Okay, so they were all wrong. Yeah, this is another whole. I don't want to get into this, but there's another whole idea. I'll just say it very briefly. There's two truths in the world. That's why the pasuk says "Midvar sheker tircha," Parshat Mishpatim, to stay away from falsehood. Which other thing in the Torah does it say to stay away from it? The rabbis say stay away from things. The Torah says asur or mutar. It doesn't say stay away from it. Why does it say stay away from this? And the way I understand it, if you like it, you can take it. You don't like it, you don't have to take this chat. Is that you have to stay away from sheker because sheker is very relative to a person. Why? Because a person can believe what he believes to be true. For example, I'm not going to get into an argument here about this, but for example, there are people out there that believe there's no such thing as coronavirus. Never existed. It's all a hoax. It's all fake. Yeah, you find many people like that. And you have people who believe it. So there it is. So who's right, who's wrong? Whatever you want to believe, you believe. That's the way it is. But then we have something that's called Torah Emet. That's why we say Torah Emet, right? Natan Lanu. Why give us Torah Emet Natan Lanu? To tell us that there's really one truth, the truth of the Torah. The Torah truth is the only truth. That's why in Pirkei Avot it says, make your will Hashem's will. Why? Because our will, our truth is ours. However, if you want the real truth, the real way to go, to follow the Torah. That's why it says, Midvar Sheker Terachak, stay far away from Sheker, because Sheker lives in a person via the truths that he decides to believe as being true. And it's a philosophical approach, I think. But I think it speaks volumes of the actual truth. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Now we're coming to the opinion of Yeshua ben Korcha. Yeshua ben Korcha Omer, he says, mitzvah litzoah, it's a mitzvah to compromise. Not only is it okay to compromise, it's a mitzvah to compromise. Shnei Amar, because it says in, this is a pasuk in Zechariah, emet u'mishpat shalom shiftu b'sharechem. Truth and judgment you should put out in all your gates. How could you have in judgment peace? And in place of this peace, there's no judgment. You're judging, someone's going to get upset. Someone's losing out. If you're compromising it, everyone will be happy. So how could you have both in the same place? What type of judgment is peace? Rather, this is compromise. That's why it says by David, David made mishpat u'tzedakah. He made judgment and righteousness. How could you do both? If you're doing judgment, it's not tzedakah. U'tzedakah and mishpat, and tzedakah is not mishpat. Ela, ezehu mishpat sheyesh bo tzedakah. Which judgment is considered that has tzedakah? And the omer zeh b'tzu'ah. When you compromise, it's judgment with tzedakah. Now, 1 second. Atan l'tanakama. Rabbi Yezer, son of Yossi Haglili, said it's asur to make a compromise. So what did he do with these psukim that seems to be saying you should compromise? The Gemara says, "Dani tadin zikat hazakai v'chayev et hayav." No, David HaMelech, he judged a regular case. He said this person is chayav, this person is patur, this person has to pay, this person doesn't have to pay. And when he saw that he made a poor person have to pay money, he would then take his own money and give it to the poor person to pay back. This is mishpat u'tzedakah. Mishpat lazeh, judgment for the person who actually deserves the money. U'tzedakah lazeh, and tzedakah to the poor person so he can pay it back. Mishpat lazeh shechzeh lo mamon, judgment for that who got his money back. And tzedakah for this because David HaMelech gave him from his own house money. That's why he said David, he made mishpat u'tzedakah l'chol amo mishpat lazeh. But judgment for this, she'achzeh lo od mimono u'tzedakah lazeh sheshilam lo mitoch beito. Now, kashya le'Rabbi. Rabbi heard this explanation. Says it's a question. The pasuk doesn't say that he made mishpat u'tzedakah for aniyim. The pasuk says that he made mishpat u'tzedakah lechol amo. He David oseh mishpat u'tzedakah lechol amo for the whole nation. So how could you say that he gave tzedakah to the poor person to pay? Everybody he did tzedakah. Rabbi explains as follows: even in the cases where he didn't give from his own money, zehu mishpat u'tzedakah. It's still considered mishpat u'tzedakah. Why? Mishpat lazeh u'tzedakah lazeh. It's a mishpat for this one and tzedakah for this one. Mishpat lazeh she'achzeh lo mamano. It's considered a mishpat, a judgment for the person who gets back the money because you're giving him back what's his. U'tzedakah lazeh, and it's considered tzedakah for the one who has to pay. Shehotzi Gezela mitahat yado, because you're taking away what was stolen from his hand. Meaning, instead of going up to Shemayim with stolen items, you take the stolen items away from him. That is considered a tzedakah. When you clear up somebody's sin, that's considered a tzedakah. So what tzedakah did David HaMelech do? The tzedakah that he did was that he took away what didn't belong to that person and gave it back to the right place. Okay? So far, we have an opinion of the first opinion in the Gemara, which was the Rabbanan gave that you need 3 judges and you can do compromise until the judgment is complete. Eliezer ben Osher Yosef Galili, who said you cannot do compromise. Yeshua ben Karcha, who said it's a mitzvah to do compromise. And now we're coming to another opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh. Shimon ben Manasseh, two people who come to the judge for a judgment, until you didn't hear their words, so you don't know what their case is. From when you heard their words, but you don't know which way the case is going to go. You're allowed to tell them, go and compromise. So as long as you didn't hear the case, or you heard the case, but you don't know which way it's going to go, you can tell them, go out and compromise. But once you heard their words, and you know which way this case is going to go, you can no longer go tell them to compromise. Once you know which way this case is going to go, the dying can no longer say compromise. They have a pasuk. The pasuk says, when the water, one releases water, water here means like a dispute, like a bursting of water. At the onset of judgment, before the dispute is revealed, before you know what's going on, you can abandon it. You can make compromise. Before the event, before you start judging the case, before you know which way it's going to go, you can abandon it. But once you started the case and you know which way it's going to go, you're not allowed to abandon it. Now, another idea. One guy who comes, he's a soft guy. One guy is a hard guy, meaning he's going to cause trouble for the judges. You see, he's a balaganist, mafioso. You're going to judge him, he's going to come after you. So, until you don't hear what they have to judge, what's the case? But once you heard their words, you don't know which way it's going to go, the law. You can tell them, I'm not judging you guys. As long as you don't know what's going to happen in the judgment, you tell them you don't want to judge. Because maybe you're going to say that the mafioso guy, he has to pay back money. He's going to start harassing the judge. Right? It's going to cause trouble for the judge. But once you've heard their case, and you know which way the case is going to go, you cannot tell to them, I'm not going to judge your case. You cannot be scared because of a person. You're not allowed to be scared because of a man. A judge has to judge Hashem's judgment. You cannot be scared of a person. So before he started the case, he's not judging. He can say, I don't want to judge the case. But once he already started, he cannot, once he heard it and knows which way he's going to go, he cannot say, I don't want to judge this case. And even the halacha brings down from the Rambam that if he's a regular judge on a regular beit din, he can never say, I'm not judging a case. If you're the main judge, right, you're one of the city judges, whatever it is, you cannot say, I'm not judging a case. If you're not judging, who's going to judge? He's talking about someone who sometimes is a dayan, sometimes is not. So he can say, I don't want to judge the case. But a regular judge can't really even say that. Yeshua ben Korcha Omer, a student who's sitting in front of his rabbi, meaning the rabbi said, I'm going to be a dayan, I'm going to the court. The student came and said, I want to do shimush, I want to learn from the rabbi how to do judgment. And he's sitting in the courthouse to watch. He came as a observer. How do you know And he sees that they're ruling wrong. That the ani, they're saying he's chayab, but really he's not. He's patur. He doesn't have to pay. And he sees there's a reason for the rich person to pay. How do you know he's not allowed to be quiet? He's there as an observer. He came to watch. How do you? And now he knows. He sees they're messing up in the halakha. How do you know that he's allowed to talk? Because it says, "Lota guru mipnei ish." You're not allowed to be scared of the person. You're not allowed to even be scared of the rabbi. If you know the halakha, of course, you have to talk nicely to the rabbi and come over and say it in a way that you're not going to offend him and remind him. But you're not allowed to be scared and not say the truth. Rabbi Hanan Omer, do not withhold your words because of your teacher. And in halakha they say if a person was there and he saw the way to help someone in one of the cases and he didn't say anything, he was over the lav of mifar sheker tirchad because he saw what the truth is and he didn't say the truth. It's as if he made strong the lie. So it's important if you know the truth, you have to say something. See something, say something, not just on the MTA. Okay. Moving further. And the witnesses should know who they're giving testimony about. And the truth is, who they're giving testimony about? They're giving testimony about Hashem. Hashem runs the world. Everything in the world happens through Hashem. Therefore, if you're going to give testimony about something happened, in reality, you're giving testimony about what Hashem did. And before who they're giving testimony. Who are they giving testimony in front of? Not just the judges. They're giving testimony in front of Hashem. And who is going to punish them if they lie? Hashem. Two people who are coming as witnesses, they're standing before Hashem. So witnesses are standing and testimony about Hashem in front of Hashem. In the same way, judges need to know who they are judging. Who are they judging? They're judging Hashem. Because everything in the world, again, happens through Hashem. So if something happened, you're actually judging Hashem's actions. But if they and who are they judging in front of? Judging in front of Hashem. If they made a mistake or they judged incorrectly, who's going to punish them? Hashem. Shneimar Elohim Nitzav Ba'adat El. Hashem is standing in the assembly of the judges. So too in Yehoshaphat it says, he said to the judges, look what you're doing. You're not judging people. You're judging Hashem. So you see, when the judge judges, he's actually judging Hashem. Now, now the Dayan is going to say, why do I need this trouble? What do I need this whole headache to judge a case? If I mess up, I'm going to get punished. I don't need this. Hashem says, with you is the matter of justice, meaning it's up to you to make judgment. The judge is required to only judge based on what can he actually see. Meaning, you cannot get in trouble if you made a mistake and there's an honest mistake. As long as you tried your best to get the facts, you asked the questions, you investigated, you did everything that's humanly possible to do, and now you still made a mistake, then you're not going to get punished because you're only responsible for what you can do. That's what Hashem wants you to do. After that, you're not anymore responsible to judge. Therefore, you have nothing to be worried about as a Dayan as long as you do your due diligence. Now, all the way in the beginning, the Rabbanan said you can make a compromise until the verdict was not finalized. So what is considered a finalized verdict? What's considered a final verdict? It's when the judges say, Ish Peloni Ata Hayav. ish paloni ata zakai. You are chayav and you are free. So this one has to pay you, whatever. Once they say what has to be the verdict, that's considered the final. Amarav, Rav says, halacha k'Reb Yeshua ben Korcha. The actual halacha is like Yeshua ben Korcha that it's a mitzvah to make a compromise. And it's a mitzvah to make a compromise. The Gemara says, "Any is it really true?" Rav Huna Tamidei Rav Hava. Rav Huna was a student of Rav, and you're saying Rav said it's a mitzvah to make a compromise. Whenever they came to a case of Rav Huna, Amar lahu, he said to those people coming, do you want me to make a judgment or do you want me to make a compromise? He asked them. If it's a mitzvah, why didn't he just do the compromise? You know, my mitzvah, what does it mean mitzvah? My mitzvah nami, what does it mean the mitzvah? It means mitzvah mitzvah is to say, do you want judgment or do you want compromise? That's what you need to do. That's the mitzvah. Do you want judgment or do you want compromise? That's the opinion of the rabbis. The rabbis said that you can make compromise until the verdict. So you could make compromise means that you're allowed to. So it's the same thing. You're saying here, you can tell them, I want to, do you want to, you don't want. It means you're allowed to, you don't have to. No, there is a big difference because according to Yeshua ben Korcha, you have to say, I can do compromise or I can do judgment. And you're saying that you have to say it. According to the Tanakama, you never have to tell them that you want to do compromise. They want to do compromise, okay, you can do it. It's not a mitzvah, it's not a shoot. According to Yeshua ben Korcha, it's a mitzvah to say compromise and try to do the compromise. But if they want din, they can do din. But according to Tanakama, it's optional. It's not something you have to try to push. Now, Hainu, Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. So that Tanakama is now like Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya said that you can do compromise also. So what's the difference? From when you heard their words. And you know which way it's going to go. You cannot tell them to go out. Say, go and compromise. That's Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. He said, once you know the way in which case is going, you no longer make the compromise. But the Tanakama, the Rabbanan said that as long as it's not the final verdict, you can still make the compromise. That's the difference in the opinions. So what is the Halacha said? Let's see what he says over here. What did he say? Let's see over here. It's a mitzvah to ask those people at the beginning of a case if they want judgment or compromise. In accordance with the Pinyan Yeshua ben Korcha, as ruled by Rav and practiced by Rav. This is the way. You start the case, you tell them right away. You want to compromise or do you want a din? That's the mitzvah to do. To give them the opportunity to make a compromise. Okay? Any questions on this? Because this is where we're going. What time is it?
From 1:34.
Oh wow, we're over by 4 minutes.
Can you hear the case and then tell them would you like to compromise or have a judge or have a judgment?
You mean how far can you go with the until when can you to do the compromise?
Yeah, because that's where I realized that the Gemara allows us to do that, no?
So as long as it does not come to a verdict, even if he knows which way it's going, he can still let them take a compromise. The halacha, as long as there's no gemar din, not finished yet, you can give the compromise. But once you made the final din, you no longer compromise.
Okay. In the example that you gave earlier about cursing Hashem that I told you.
The what?
In the example that you gave earlier,
yeah,
that he stole a fruit and then he said a blessing on it, right?
Right.
Let's say he's an amaris. He didn't say a blessing. He just ate it without the blessing.
He's compounding his averot.
No, because in the example that you gave us, you said you tell your son to do this, and then he does complete opposite, and then he tells you, he comes back to you and says, "Thank you, I did just as you asked," which is not. But here he's not thanking Hashem. You know what I mean?
So
He
he's
knows that
saying
he
he's
did
not-
it wrong.
He's not blaspheming Hashem because he's not saying a bracha.
So that's
Yeah,
not cursing.
So if you have to eat in Issa D'Rabbanan, you shouldn't say a bracha.
Yeah.
So here you're coming to the question, halacha, I have to look this up. The question is, person is sick, right? Now they tell him the only way he can survive is if he eats pig, right?
Yeah.
Choleh is allowed to eat whatever he needs to eat, even if it's Issa D'Rabbanan. So now at this point, does he make a bracha on it or not? Does he make a shah call on the pig or not? Right? On one hand, is Isur Torah to eat it. On the other hand, he needs to eat it to get better. So I let you look up this halakha. You get back to us next week with the din.
Saying a blessing is the Rabbanan though,
Okay?
and not eating a pig is not is the right.
But now he needs to eat the pig because he's sick. Does that change anything? All right. Let Hashem take a look at it.
You asked a question to my question.
It's the same idea. So I don't know. How do you ever judge between something that's bad and something that's bad? Like, how do you, it's very hard to say one way or the other. If something is wrong, it's wrong. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna finish here for this week. Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll pick up next week. Next week is, let me just put the recording off. Hold on a second, and then I'll just make a little announcement.